Hey guys, this is Tim Fraser from Foundry Options. I'm going to continue my series on talk about the vegetable soup around cloud. Previously, just as a recap, I talked about infrastructure as a service, platform software as a service, infrastructure as a service, and platform as a service. No, not necessarily in that order, actually. Um, and I promised I was going to cover a rather complex topic, which is hybrid cloud. Most of the people that I have worked with in the industry, um, they all anybody you ask about what is hybrid cloud, you're going to get about twice as many answers as the number of people you ask. So there's a lot of confusion in this space, and it's not like I've got the crystal ball to be able to describe all exactly the things that how it connects in your brain. But let me try a little bit. When I looked at the operating models of cloud, and remember the cloud is about running compute in various different environments. You can run it in your data center. You could run it in a public cloud. So you could run a cloud as a private cloud. You could run it as a public offering, such as Amazon or Azure. You can also go into Amazon as a public slash private. It's offering, because Amazon is actually a public cloud offering. They offer other offers, which makes it a little bit more confusing anyway. But at the end of the day, if you look at your infrastructure and you say, okay, I've got infrastructure here in my data center, and I've got infrastructure in the cloud. And if you want to use run your application workload potentially across these different environments, whether it's private cloud, public cloud, or if it's setting in some combination thereof. I've heard different definitions, so let me try to describe a little bit about what those definitions might be. So, for example, hybrid infrastructure, which is infrastructure as a service, down at the platform level, is the integration of infrastructure and hardware and utility sort of components between the two cloud environments, whether it's private or public, doesn't really matter. Okay, this is sort of your first hybrid environment. So infrastructure, you can run compute in your data center as a traditional data center or a private cloud, or you can span into a public cloud. And when an application is using workload in either of those two, some people call that sort of a hybrid cloud environment. And quite frankly, it's always confusing to me as well. But the way I look at this is, you may have an application, for example, that is running some of the tiers, internet-facing tiers, potentially in an Amazon environment or in a public cloud environment. You can run your web servers, possibly some of your app servers. But let's just say your data sits back at the data center, and you're running sort of the tier. So whether or not you've got the ability to run a complete set of applications in Amazon and some of it in the data center. So you have web app and database in Amazon, and web app and database in the data center, and you can have the ability to run both sides. Whether or not you're using some of your production workload in the data center, and you can burst out some workload into Amazon based on time of day or demand on utilization. So that is one example of infrastructure that you're consuming in both sides. You may have a whole different consumption model in how you actually consume that workload and how you deploy into these environments. And I'm not going to cover that right now. But let's just say you're running some workload there in Amazon, some workload in the data center. That could be perceived as a hybrid cloud environment. But that's not the exciting way of using it as well. That's probably the simplest case, but it creates some networking complexities and whether or not your application can be sprayed across latency zones between networks and data centers. Okay, so that's number one. Number two is, I've got a tiered application, which is a hybrid cloud where an application is sitting, a web and app tier, like I was saying earlier, in Amazon, and the data sits in the database in a private cloud or private data center. So that's where you split your tiers. Your application, for it to fully function, requires all tiers to operate at the same time. But it really comes down to using those tiers of service from Amazon, for example, for elasticity, so you could burst out web and app traffic as your capacity increases and your demand increases, or you can shrink, but you keep all your crown jewels at home, so to speak. So that's one additional way you can run an Amazon workload or a hybrid workload for an application and just tier it out between the application tiers depending on how complex the application is and how the application can sustain latency, once again, across data centers and across the cloud. In a scenario like that, it might be useful to do virtual private cloud and bridge that so you can effectively maintain some better network connectivity and maybe some better experience and latency between the two ecosystems. So you might use Direct Connect, for example, to bridge the networks together. So now you have a relatively fast network between your tiers in the data center. Okay, so that's the other one. Now, you may actually also, some people call hybrid cloud, such as, you have a mobility platform you can run inside a cloud. So you can have mobility, you can have web apps in the data in private cloud, or you can also run application workloads inside your data center. And I've actually heard that one, and quite frankly, that one doesn't resonate really well with me because that's still the same as the first one. You're basically segregating some workloads based on platform. But adding mobility workload into a cloud ecosystem doesn't really make it hybrid. It just means that all you're doing is you tiered out some workload into what is appropriate for scale and performance. So that's another way that people describe cloud. Quite frankly, this languaging that I'm using right now is probably not super crisp, but it is important to recognize that this is how people think. And it is freaking confusing about, where's my workload, how am I running my applications and all that. And then you've actually got another aspect of cloud, which is what some people call multi-cloud. And so you actually have an ecosystem in Amazon or Azure or your private cloud, and you're inside your data center using OpenStack or maybe VMware, and you may have some traditional workload in your data center. All those three potentially have all kinds of different management strategies. You may have capacity management, you may have performance management, you may have application distribution models, deployment of application services, what's typically called CI/CD, continuous integration, continuous deployment. In different ways. You may deploy in Amazon one way, deploy in the data center another way. And a lot of companies are moving towards a unification strategy around that because it's very complex. How do I take an application binary that's built by a developer, whether it's Java or it's Node or whatever you've got, you containerize that, or you take that workload and application component and you want to deploy it to various ecosystems. It comes down to having a simple, unified way of not only deploying it, managing it, operating it, scaling it, all that stuff. And that is an area I see some new direction. It's really not super new. RightScale and Cloud Foundry and several other companies have been doing this type of a unification across clouds as one of the key ways to be able to make it look like the application is the same application, the same management in each of these ecosystems. And that's actually probably the most exciting thing for me, because no matter how you tier your application, if it's we have an app in the database in Amazon, a database, or vice versa, depending on how your application works, or you decide to have a unified approach to managing these things, this is what the industry is calling, and Gartner calls, and the industry's created a segment called CMP, Cloud Management Platforms. And so in the cloud management space, there's quite a bit of hype. A lot of companies talk about having a push button deployment to whatever, and can that be done? Absolutely yes. Is it something easy to do? Well, that kind of depends. If you're going to go down the vendor path and you're going to buy some tools and start deploying them everywhere, you'll end up with what we used to have in the infrastructure management arena, such as tools like infrastructure management and operation tools, the ITSM sort of lifecycle things. BMC, CA, all these what I call big, heavy iron, very expensive tools that you only get maybe 6 or 12% of benefit out of using those enterprise tools, and you spend millions of dollars and months and months and months trying to get them up and running and trying to deploy them and all this. CMP has that same problem. A cloud management platform, unified cloud management platform, really needs to be agile, lightweight, and capable of deploying across all these. So So when you're looking at your hybrid strategy, you need to really ask yourself the question: do you guys have the DNA to in your company to build an application and deploy the same binary in any direction, whether it's within a VMware environment, a data center operations environment, or a cloud ecosystem, Amazon or Azure, and have the ability to monitor it, scale it, being elastic, and keep track of what was deployed, so you can actually see what's really going on in the application through a unified dashboard, common sets of tools. Now, there's quite a few tools that are coming out, I said, in this space, CMP space. And in another episode, I think I'm going to spend a little more time talking a little bit about what does CMP mean to you as an IT professional. There's a lot of promises being put out here. My personal preference in terms of looking at tools that are relatively early in the market, and there's a lot of hype in the market about this, is to keep it simple. You need to look at the cloud management tools and just take what the vendors say with a grain of salt, and you're going to have to play. It's going to have to fit your DNA. Some of it might be developer-centric. Some of it might be operations-centric, in terms of build and deploy-centric, and others might be run-centric. And the DNA of your company and your team is really where you need to align these tools with, because you may need tools that are either more on the dev-friendly side and agile versus the traditional plan, build, run type of an operation. And think about your operating model, because your operating model is really in your company is going to drive your organization's readiness to embrace these tools. So I'm going to leave you at that one for now. If you want to know more about these topics, please comment on this, because I will respond. I will take some time to give a little bit more detail and take another chapter in these talks to go a little bit deeper. I am going to be doing an interview on this particular topic, cloud management platform, and talk about the pros and cons and what are the benefits of why CMP tools are here to stay, and what's really going to happen to this market space, because I think there's quite a bit of changes that I see coming in this market space. I got some notes here, and I want to just highlight a couple of things. Okay, this is something that I've picked up from the from the Cloud Standard Customer Council documentation. You can find it on the internet, and it comes down to really recognizing why is hybrid cloud important to the business. And there's a few things in here, and I'll just talk about the first, maybe one or two items. Okay, the key value points of a hybrid cloud computing are: it enables cost-effective, rapid response of elastic IT. Okay, better aligned with the business needs in order to support the two speeds of IT. IT has a slow speed and a fast speed. The cloud drives this fast speed. Slow speed is the traditional stuff, which means it's highly customized, highly optimized for a certain type of workload. So this is an opportunity when you use hybrid cloud to maximize where elasticity and speed is needed. Okay, that's number one. Number two, it provides a portfolio of business and IT services that leverage the best capability of cloud services, cloud service providers, enabling flexibility that can be built in it and be deployed. So this is about flexibility and having the ability to really embrace the DNA of your company in terms of elasticity that I just said, dev focused, app focused, deployment focused, operation focused, or operational scale. And I think the last one here is it enables the business to innovate faster while leveraging existing systems and capabilities. You don't have to gut and replace everything, but you do need to take advantage of some of the emerging technologies to be able to really take it, accelerate some of your cloud computing requirements. I'm going to go a little deeper on those topics under another segment. But if you want to know more, please, like I said, make some comments on here. If you're on my live now, please, thumbs up or make a comment that you're here, so I know that you're here, and we can talk some more as a follow-up on the comments. So thanks again, guys. Tim Fraser from 5D Options. This is a short quantum tech tip. So if you're interested in hearing more, go back to my channel on Facebook, and you can place a bunch of videos I've done on the series. Don't forget that this is part 3 of the series of Cloud Vegetable Soup. So if you feel like you got mixed in with the broth on the soup in terms of the hybrid cloud environment, Don't feel lost. Don't feel like it's only you. A lot of people have this problem, and quite frankly, it's very difficult to truly explain the nuances because it's like a Swiss Army knife, and there's many different ways you can use those tools. It all depends on what problem you're trying to solve. Okay, so till next time, well, I'll sign off and talk to you later. Bye bye.